Welcome to the Dear NICU Mama podcast. This podcast is a safe place to connect with other NICU moms by listening to interviews with trauma-informed medical and maternal mental health experts, remarkable stories from the NICU, and intentional roundtable conversations.
Our hope is that you feel like you're sitting across the table from another NICU sister and feel seen and validated in your experience. No matter where you are on your healing journey, this podcast is here to remind you that you are not alone. Welcome to the sisterhood.
Welcome back, mamas. It's so good to be here. We have a really special episode, and I wish you guys could all see how beautiful Aisha looks today.
Thank you.
She's wearing this cute denim jacket, these cute glasses. She's just adorable.
Thank you so much. I just threw this on this morning as I was rushing out to do all the things. So thank you. You guys should see Ashley in her cute little There Is Goodness Ahead.
I'm rocking my Dear NICU Mama hat today. It's covering the greasy hair. So,
you know, us mothers, we're really good at masking. We're just like, let's throw on the jean jacket, the little cap, and we're cute.
Yep, we're cute. We make it work. Absolutely. I love it. Well, Aisha, we have a really special episode today, and you are actually the one that connected with this mama first. So would you do us the honor of introducing our very special guest today?
I would love to. I am very excited. So I met this amazing mama at one of our Girls Night Out. And Girls Night Out is our support group, our peer support group that meets last Wednesday of every month. And we're doing our thing, and all of a sudden this mom starts just speaking so much love and encouragement to the moms in the group. And I was just blown away and just loved how much she cared and was so gentle and in being supportive to moms, and just everything she had to say was just like, I was like, wow, who is this more? And then getting to know a little bit more about her story, I find out that she was also now a practicing NICU nurse. And so not only is this mom a NICU mom and knows what it's like to have a baby in the NICU, but now she actually gets to work alongside the team that saved her daughter's life. So I just, the story just kept getting better and better, and I really thought that it would be so great to get to know her more and her story and where she is today. And I thought it would just be a really awesome episode leading up to Nurses Week, which we all us NICU moms have at least one NICU nurse that we just have adopted into our family and who we continue to stay in contact with. And so I thought, what a better way to honor NICU nurses than to have Kerri with us today to share her story and journey. So Kerri, thank you so much for being here today and willing to share your story and share hope and encouragement to other moms. You already have been doing that so beautifully, and I just know that this episode is just going to be one more way that you support and love on NICU moms. So thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Aisha, for that wonderful introduction. I'm really honored to be here. A little nervous, so.
She's also rocking a really cool gaming headset right now, and I'm a little jealous.
Courtesy of one of the kids and all my dry shampoo covering underneath of it, But thank you. Thank you. I really am truly honored to be here to talk today and to be a part of your group in the Girls Night Out. And it's just been a great connection and a good couple of years of being in your social media group and being able to connect with other moms kind of globally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you kind of touched on it already a little bit, but do you want to maybe just start with like how you heard about Dear NICU Mama, and maybe if you want a little bit of your story and how you became a NICU mom yourself?
Sure, definitely. So I have a 3-year-old now. She's doing well. 3 years ago, she came early at 25 weeks gestation. I had ruptured membrane. I was abrupted, had choreo. She was in distress, so urgent C-section And that was the start of the NICU journey. She spent 86 days in a NICU close to home, luckily, only about 25 minutes away. Prior to that, I had no knowledge of really NICU or how resilient these little kids were. I just knew, some of the things that could occur. So it started out a little rocky. She had, I think, pretty a typical journey where she had the low SATs, low heart rates, and then that led to, later difficult feedings and all those typical things that I know a lot of parents can be familiar with or understand. But I think the hardest part for me was the social isolation. It was during COVID, not being able to have family support. Just me and my husband were allowed to be in there with her, and feeling like I really couldn't connect with anybody who understood what we were going through. And then that carried on even after discharge. Fortunately, we had a good outcome and we were able to take her home after 86 days. But the journey doesn't really stop at the NICU. I think we all know that. For a lot of us, there's a lot of care afterward. And just feeling like I still couldn't find anybody that I could relate to, even talking to therapists, and it just wasn't what I was really needing. So I started looking on social media and found Dear NICU Mamas and attended that first girls' night out, and it was just really endearing and helpful. I'm really grateful to have found it, and to be a part of it still. So.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, that night, it was kind of your first time really opening up and sharing a little bit of your journey and all you had been through. And that takes a lot.
That was the first time.
That takes
telling your story out loud, I think, is opens the floodgates,
absolutely.
But very therapeutic for sure.
Yeah, would you like to maybe go into that a little bit, how that experience was for you and the importance of being able to articulate a lot of those feelings that were kind of just locked inside really up until that point?
Yeah, I think that you get so used to realizing what you've overcome, and you kind of push down a lot of those feelings because you're just fortunate to be discharged and out of the NICU, and grateful for the wins that you've experienced that you don't really process, or at least I didn't. The real trauma of it all, honestly. So when you start talking about it and you allow yourself to talk to other people who have experienced similar things, it's very healing. I had, obviously spoken to my best friends and even nurses that, I ended up then working with. It's still not the same. It's still, there's not an understanding of really what you go through until you meet people who've gone through that same situation and can be empathetic to what you've gone through and what you're dealing with. And then you just find this community of resources too. There's so much hope in the little things that you worry about for your individual child, and understanding and meeting other moms who are like, yeah, I feel the same way, or my kid's going through this, or this is a resource that we found, or just that connection, the two pieces of it, the mental health help and camaraderie and understanding that you get when you're a part of this group, and then just the resources too of just saying, oh, I didn't even think to do that or try that, or yeah, my kid doesn't sleep or doesn't eat, or those commonalities that we all kind of share. Makes you feel a little less alone, in the journey.
Right. Well, and you bring up a really important conversation about how oftentimes when you're in the NICU, you're just kind of in that fight or flight survival mode. Your priority is your baby. And then you come home and all of a sudden that baby's okay, but sometimes your body doesn't know that yet. And so you're still kind of operating in that fight or flight. And then we really begin to what we sometimes call like the next big chapter of the NICU journey, which is the processing of everything that we just endured for you, those 86 days. And so I know you briefly mentioned like talking with a counselor. Was that something that you knew was a priority for you? Like you were like, yep, this is something that I want to actively seek out. And how was it for you to find a provider? Because I think that's something that can be difficult for moms, is finding a provider that they really click with and that also just understands the trauma of the NICU and all that goes into it. How was your experience with that?
Honestly, it was a little rough, but I've used that now in my current practice as a NICU mom to kind of help other people. And what I mean by that is, in my NICU journey, I had even nurses that now I work with, that I know are wonderful people. I don't think that there's a level of understanding of how some people struggle internally and externally. And while a lot of nurses understand, like, this is very common for these babies to go through these things, it's not common to us, even as a nurse, to understand what is happening with our babies. And there's not really a lot of calm that we feel when we're in there, right? So not only do you have sometimes medical professionals telling you like everything's fine, but then family and friends who don't really know what to say are telling you that too. So for me, I really tried and not very successfully keep my feelings in check and inside, and wasn't processing anything. And then what would happen, of course, is that I would just kind of explode, honestly, and that my coworkers can tell you that I was not a very good parent, which is kind of a shocker to people who maybe know me, because I tend to have more of a like a calmer, I guess, personality and understanding, and but in the NICU I was not very kind. I had a hard time not having control. I had a hard time just trusting strangers caring for my baby. So I think I just put off my own needs of mental health therapy, and then after the NICU, I did know, like, this I'm not processing this well. My husband was helpful in explaining that to me also. And I did find somebody, it wasn't a good fit, and I wasn't feeling like I was getting the help that I really needed. And then ended up finding a really wonderful woman on telehealth, thankfully through an app, that just kind of was a game changer. I think that, coupled with this social media group, was what actually brought me through. But, as NICU moms, we're at an increased risk for postpartum depression, anxiety, family issues, marriage problems. Just, there's so much research to that we really need to be helped along the way by hospital staff, by our friends, by our family, saying like, it's okay to try to find somebody to talk to. And it's not something until very recently, there's been this stigma around mental health that we don't even talk about it. But now I think we're all changing that.
Absolutely.
And promoting, getting help and getting mental health help. So
I think you brought up a couple things, but some that stood out to me that I think are worth like kind of highlighting is just the fact that, like, once you're home, there's this like pressure to feel like everything should be okay now. Like, the worst is over. We should be happy. We should be grateful and not have all these negative emotions that oftentimes kind of flood in once you are home and out of like the intense, like high risk, everything is alert, and for me, it was very similar until I was able to come home. And when I was home, I was just literally crying all day, every day, and asking myself, what is wrong with me? Why can't I be happy that we're home and that we're doing okay? it wasn't until like I took the same steps of like, I actually think that I need to see someone because I don't think that I'm okay. And I think that I need to take care of myself. That was hard to do too, because of this stigma and this outward pressure of like, you should be okay now. Everything is better. So I think that that was something that you brought up that is important to mention, is that if you are home right now and you are feeling all of these negative emotions, that's normal and quite frankly to be expected too, because what you did go through is so intense, and you are worthy of taking the time to heal, and it's okay if that requires extra support from a medical professional, a therapist, or, you know, even peer support groups like that. That is okay. And so I love that you kind of opened that up and mentioned that, because I think it's not uncommon for moms to feel a little bit like, am I broken that I'm feeling this way?
Oh yeah, broken is the word. I think that there's probably a lot of us that can relate to that. That's exactly how you feel. Even the most, you know, self-proclaimed put together person, then a NICU baby comes and it's just, it completely changes your life. I think that trauma, and then I think after bringing home my daughter Katie, this guilt set in that I wasn't expecting, but I didn't even realize was a commonality until joining this group either. Like, what did I do to cause this? What could I have done differently? Should I have been on bed rest longer? Should I, you know, all these things. And that just starts to flood in with just the whole traumatic, you know, journey itself. So being able to work through that's really, you just have to work through it to get to the other side, you know, and it's a long, long journey for sure.
Absolutely. Well, and I think too, sometimes it comes with this level of acceptance that we will never be the same. And that can be a lot to grapple with, because who we were prior to our NICU experience and who we are after we're completely reborn after that experience. And right away, it may seem like for all the wrong reasons, right? We're like, why do I feel so guilty? Why am I sad all the time? Why, you know, because those are the kind of those first initial feelings. And then after we forged through that fire, we realized like, wow, I also have this like incredible resilience and this like new compassion for life. But there also comes this grieving period of like, I am no longer who I was. And it takes time to really figure out who you are now. And like you said, with those resources, it becomes possible. But there's like this whole identity shift of who I were prior to my trauma, who I am today, and how I kind of rediscover who I am. And so that was one question that Isha had kind of wrote about in here, was just a little bit about who you were prior and after. You know, how did you find that you changed, both for maybe some more difficult reasons, and also, you know, how did your NICU experience make you a better person, a better mom? You know, how do you see the world differently maybe than you did prior to NICU experience?
Yeah, so there is a quote that I actually printed out at some point in my hazy journey now looking back. And I think it's like April Cabral, but it says, strength is what we gain from the madness we survive. And I remember just clinging to that, like, I need strength. You know, I started out before Katie. My life was orderly and perfect, you know, seemingly. My older kids were pretty self-sufficient. My job was, you know, I was a diligent nurse leader, director of an adult unit in a hospital, very structured, very career focused. I was in a master's program to go on to be a CNO or something. And then Katie came, and my life and my goals and the things that were important to me completely changed. After Katie, there's this sense of, you know, you recall wishing for ordinary days when you're in the NICU. I just wanted a day where something bad didn't happen, or just, you know, not even the good, because sometimes you'd have these good days in a row and then you'd have this setback and it felt like you were just reliving all the pain all over again. So I just wanted ordinary. So now when I have an ordinary day with my family, it's the best day ever, you know? it definitely opened my eyes to empathy. I had been a nurse for 15 years before that and had really started to move away from the bedside and away from what originally drew me to the field anyway, which is just that compassion and wanting to take care of other humans. And now it's like I found that again. I quit my job, gave all that up, every ladder, ring that I'd climbed, and went back to the bedside. Now I really enjoy not only taking care of these little ones, but really focusing on the parent. I love being able to, I don't always share my story with them, but I love to be able to just say, I'm here. What do you need? How can I help you? And just provide empathy and allow them a safe place to talk about it, because everybody experiences this differently. Some people are very, very strong mentally, and they will smile through it. And some people break down every second, and both of those ways are fine. However you can get through it is how you get through it. But just being able to really provide that compassion and empathy and get back to the core of why I became a nurse has been kind of the little gift that I got out of all of this, and a piece of meaning that it took me a while to figure out, why this had happened, and now I can kind of lean on that. Like there was a little meaning here and a lesson for me, and something that I've used as a tool to grow. And it's changed me as a mom, as a friend, and definitely as a nurse. Now I'm back in school for my master's, but I want to, graduate and be a nurse practitioner that I can focus on maternal health, and then developmental outcomes for these kids when they leave the NICU. I got so sad getting attached to them for so long, and then sending them home with their parents and not seeing them again. So now I'm like, I really would like to see them after the NICU and in those really important first years, and help these families find the support that they need developmentally to give these kids the best outcomes possible after everything they've been through. They really need those advocates who will be like, oh, there's this resource, or oh, there's this new study, and let's try this with your son or daughter, or, going forward. So fundamentally changed for sure.
That's amazing. Well, and something that I remember you also mentioning during one of the girls' night out is you were talking about, it was so beautiful. You were talking about how as NICU moms, it's so important for us to remember that we know our child best and to listen to our instinct and our intuition. And so I wonder if you can kind of talk a little bit about that in two perspectives. One, while you were in the NICU, did you feel empowered to kind of speak up and have kind of, in a sense, authority over like the care of your baby, of Kate? And then how do you now, as a nurse, kind of empower moms in the NICU to remember their voice in all of it? Because it can feel a little bit like we don't have, like you said, that control or that say, because we're not medical professionals. We don't know. But you just said it so beautifully in Girls Night Out. I remember there were a couple of NICU moms that were currently in the NICU during that session, and you were so kind in telling them, listen to that voice inside of you, because and even after the NICU, when we're home and we're going through all the developmental hurdles that we have to kind of go through, that voice should be the loudest.
Yeah, I 100% agree. We have these bonds with our kids, and just real quick talking about bonds, just from my personal experience, the bond that I had with my first two daughters and then the bond that I had with my NICU baby were very different. We're in a different environment. And for some people, and for anybody who listens to this that's struggling to bond, I just want to touch on that. That's so normal. Oxytocin levels influence that. There's just all this research about that, but that bond happens and it comes, and it's okay that it doesn't feel like your other babies, the bonds with them. So I just wanted to say that real quick, but there is this deep internal bond that we have with these kids, whether we realize it or not. that drives our intuition. And I absolutely believe that parents know, especially mothers. We know, we can sense when something's not right. We know when our kids are responding to treatments in certain ways. We are the ones there, their best advocate, and we're able to be their voice. So never feel like you can't open up about that. In my own experience in the NICU, I did voice concerns, not in a very productive way, admittedly. I was very ruled by emotions and reactions, so I was not one of the easier parents to get along with, I think, which my coworkers and I all laugh about now because they're just like, oh my goodness, you remember when you did this? And I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. But they still allowed me that opportunity, which was the incredible part of the end of this, is that I was able to go and work side by side with them, and they were so forgiving and understanding of my situation and just, you know, what I was going through, that they didn't just write me off as some, you know, crazy mom who just, you know, and they gave me the chance to see, you know, how I could work with them. But find the person in the NICU, whether it's a neonatologist or a physical therapist or occupational or a tech, somebody that you can feel comfortable with and you feel like will listen to you and share how you're feeling. Like you're not the primary caregiver, or that people aren't listening to you, or because I can guarantee you now that I'm on the other side as the NICU nurse, a lot of times we don't realize that parents are struggling. We don't realize that you want to be more involved, or that you're too afraid to get involved, or there's cultural barriers or language barriers, or all of these things. Just, we have to be able to communicate with one another, and you just find who you're comfortable with talking about these things with, and then that way that person can be an advocate for you and, you know, figure out a way to kind of change that situation in the NICU for you, where you feel like you're more involved in the care of your baby. But nurses are the number one trusted profession for a reason. Like, we get into this, most of us, because we want to be that advocate for you, even when it doesn't feel like it. And I do know from personal experience, there was plenty of times when it certainly didn't feel like I had an advocate. But now I can see how I just felt really isolated and the reasons why I felt like that. And going back, I wish I would have communicated more about the struggles I was actually having. You get so focused on the care of your child, you don't say, I'm struggling with being a mom today. I'm struggling and I need to be able to just do a diaper change, or I need you to talk to me more and explain to me more what is going on with, you know, this breathing machine, or any of those little things that you need. Whatever it is, just don't be afraid to communicate, and find one, if you can find one person in that setting that really feel comfortable with and trust, just tell them, and they can be your advocate to the rest of the staff.
So not to put you on the spot then, because one thing I sometimes like to do on the podcast is like kind of role play a little bit. So let's say that you're a mom and you're feeling some of those feelings of, I'm not feeling like I'm the parent. I feel like I'm just I'm just watching my child get taken care of. And let's say that I'm like the trusted medical professional, whether that's the NP or the nurse or even a social worker. How would you recommend, like, you know, having that conversation? What would you say? And maybe how would you initiate that conversation to really kind of regain some of those motherhood roles that you're really craving?
Yeah, so first, just try to take a deep breath, and then in very clear, plain language, just say how you're feeling. I think that it's really appealing to women nurses when you just explain how you're feeling. I can remember an instance I came in and I was scrubbing in, and I could see a nurse was already changing my daughter's diaper. And it was during one of those times where, you know, care was 2 times a shift, and they were still on the, where they were very little. So, you try not to go in and disrupt them while they're trying to rest and grow. So I was really upset that she had started without me, and I did not use the tactic that I'm trying to talk about now, where I just started like yelling because I had just left 2 crying children at home who couldn't understand why I couldn't put them to bed again, because I had to go see a sister that they had never met or didn't understand why she couldn't come home, all those things. So if I had just maybe said, oh, you know, I'm really struggling and I really need to feel like I'm my daughter's mother and primary care provider, what can we do? Luckily, this nurse, even with me yelling at her, literally yelling and swearing at her, just was so gracious and said, you know what, I'm really sorry. I'm going to make a sign for the front of the bed that says Mom likes to be involved in all cares activities, all diaper changes, all feedings, so on and so forth. She showed me so much grace. I mean, that I think was probably the moment when I realized I need to come and work here, because these women are phenomenal. Women and men. We have male nurses too. Obviously, staff. I'm sorry, I don't want to be exclusive, but just like plain language, you know, just, you know, human being to human being. If we could just try to communicate in that way, then the staff will be receptive, you know. And there's different personality types. You know, some people value the personality types that are like, oh, everything's going to be fine. They want to hear that. And some people want to hear statistics and really, you know, and so you find your person. That's what I was saying, across the NICU, whatever their role is in that environment, you just find who you're comfortable with and talk to them as clear and as plainly as you can. And I know that, you know, things will be easier and staff will be helpful.
Well, and I just love how much compassion you have for yourself when you were in the NICU, because I think we don't really talk about this very often, Aisha. Maybe that's another podcast episode of, you know, we can almost feel like shame and embarrassment, like, oh my gosh, I yelled at that nurse. I can never tell anybody because they will all judge me and think I'm crazy. But when you're in that place, you are not, I mean, you are just on all cylinders. You are like in that fight or flight. Like, it makes complete sense why we would yell at a nurse occasionally or, you know, like have some of those outbursts. But I think what you're doing here is you're normalizing that and eradicating a lot of shame that some of us feel, because we all want to be the nurse's favorite mom, right? Like, maybe that's just a people pleaser in me, but I want them to think like, wow, Ashley's the chillest mom I've ever dealt with. But the reality is like, we can't always be chill when our baby's fighting for their lives. And it's okay.
The NICU is, the NICU is a place for tears. It's a place for anger. And we are trained to help you work through some of those things. And if we are not able to the extent that like I needed help, then we can help refer you to other services. But I tried to hold all that in and not explain it to staff what I was really going through. So resources weren't made available to me. So you have to be, I mean, listen, we vet our kids' daycares. Think about how much thought we put into who we're going to leave our children with, to expect that we're not going to have some sort of emotion, negative emotion, when we're like, oh, here's stranger. Here's my sick child who's trying to survive life right now. I'm sure you're going to do a good job. I can't expect that parents are going to trust me. It takes a lot for me to sit down with these parents, caregivers, and get them to trust me and establish that, so that and that's the goal, right? So that they can actually go home and have a good night's sleep knowing that their baby's, you know, taken care of by a facility and a team of people who are going to do good for their child. So we got to give ourselves a little bit of grace there for how we react in situations like that where we have no control, you know?
Well, and I love too how you are humanizing the nurses as well, because I think sometimes we can be so like focused on one thing that we forget that our nurses are people who also have their own issues that they might be going through. And I think that it's just so important to remember that you know, taking care of our babies and they're doing their job. But they're also people, and they also deserve compassion from us. And that's not always easy, of course, because we are in a heightened state. But to just have that in the back of our minds too, of like, I don't know what my nurse has been going through. And so I love that too, because I don't think that that's something that is talked about often, is how, you know, our nurses are people too and deserve some grace and compassion.
Yeah. I had a doctor one time when I was a very new nurse. I remember in a code tell me, we are humans saving humans.
Yeah.
And that's something that's stuck with me forever. But to just kind of touch on what you're saying, Aisha, I really appreciate that, because just for some perspective, there's two things that I tell parents in the NICU. And one is, whether your baby is in the NICU for 1 day or 400 days, that fear over your child is the same. So your feelings are valid, whether your baby is a 38-week baby with a low blood sugar or a 400-gram, 22-week-old gestation preemie. That fear that we all experience is the same. So your care is equally important. But I will say that there are times when, you know, I've held a child in the palm of my hand and had to help a grieving mother who lost multiple kids in a day, and then turn around and help a mom struggling and crying because she thought her kid was going home after all this time, and then wouldn't, you know, the baby wouldn't feed or wouldn't, you know, finish a bottle or had a Brady and you got to kind of look at the nurse too with empathy and understand that we get dysregulated also. And that's a lot of trauma for us too, to lose kids, or to sit side by side with a grieving mother and not have it also affect us. We want it to affect us. We don't want to lose that part of being a human being. So sometimes we carry that too, and we're definitely not perfect. But that communication piece is always what's going to save us, right? Like if we can just humanize it and talk more about it and talk with each other, not be afraid to communicate. You do not have to be perfect nurse or perfect patient in the NICU for sure. The perfect mom. We definitely appreciate the nice But I definitely am, I think, kind of notorious in my place of work for being the difficult parent nurse, because I can really empathize more with them, and and I'm almost drawn to them because I have this like sense of urgency to like pair them with resources and get, you know, try to provide them a little strength and that stuff. But anyway, thanks for mentioning that about how we're not perfect, because we certainly are not.
I'm sure too, as a nurse, you're always told like, you guys are angels. And you're like, yeah, but I also like am not perfect and will mess up, you know.
We're not.
Well,
definitely.
And one thing
not.
I want to make sure to touch on before we get too close to the end here is that you have this unique position of being a NICU parent and a NICU nurse. And I can only imagine that going back to the NICU, to the same NICU, right, that your daughter was cared for, would be incredibly triggering, and, you know, come with its own set of things to process. And I think you can speak to a demographic in the NICU that we have a lot of, where it's NICU mom turned NICU nurse or NICU nurse turned NICU mom, and how you hold both of those worlds and how you know, really process it. And now you're able to talk about it from this like beautiful, kind of more evolved sense of like, I'm able to give back. But I'm sure right away it came with its own challenges of, holy cow, this is like very similar to my daughter's experience. I need a minute in the pumping room to just come down from this. So I'd love to know your experience and also your encouragement for other NICU nurse, NICU moms.
It definitely was that whole, what was I thinking, that for a while. Luckily, I work with, I really truly believe the best team of nurses on the planet. I can remember the first time I had to go back as a NICU nurse to the OR where my daughter was born. And of course, it was with a 25-weeker, same as mine, a little girl. And luckily for me, there's another nurse who works in the NICU who also 18 years ago had a 25-weeker.
Oh my gosh.
And so I already started to well up, and she's like, I'll go with you. I'll go with you. So she goes back there with me. And of course, I'm like trying to hold it together. I have to leave after delivery to cry. But you just get to see these great outcomes more oftentimes than not, that you just feel empowered to just keep going. And slowly, you kind of become, I don't want to say numb to it, but stronger to it. You figure out how, not to let it completely just open that wound, but more like kind of, I don't know, inspire you to keep doing what you're doing, knowing that there's a purpose and working through that. But communication, again, goes back to that, just being able to talk to the employees, the coworkers that I have, and say, oh, this is really hurting today. I need a minute, and having them understand has made all the difference. Now it's there's sometimes that, walking in to that facility, I'm like, okay, for whatever reason, I'm feeling this again, but you just keep pushing through and see the good in the outcomes when these moms reach out to you after they've left, or they leave you little cards that say how much they appreciate you. There's nothing more. There's nothing more important than that. I mean, it's just, I have the best time in the world. I really do.
I love that you mentioned, like, I feel like as NICU moms, you just forever have like a spidey sense of how another NICU mom is doing. And I love that 18-year past veteran NICU mom could know, like, I'm going to come with you. You know? Like,
I get chills thinking about that. There was a woman. Yeah. In the NICU, there was a woman who I was probably crying at my daughter's bedside, because that's what I did, I think, most of the time. But she was on her way out, and she passed her little phone number on a piece of paper on the bedside table and didn't say anything and left. And I was just like, oh my gosh, we're still friends to this day. Our kids were little NICU neighbors. But yeah, having coworkers or even NICU neighbors, if you're in an open pod like we are, like to understand what you're going through and just kind of say, hey, I'm here. What can we do to help? But yeah, that nurse, she's been, I think we're just going to be friends forever, just, yeah,
my God, love it.
For sure.
Well, I love that. And I love, I feel like the two themes of this conversation have been just like a self-acceptance and acceptance of where we are, wherever that is on the spectrum. One day we can be super hopeful and happy and we can conquer the world, and other days we might be very disheartened and defeated and feeling low on the ground. And I think the important thing is to honor that feeling, acknowledge it. I think acknowledging it is probably the most important, is just, I acknowledge that right now I'm feeling X, Y, or Z. And then really that's how we then get to move through those feelings, because as we know, all feelings are temporary and they will come and go. And so just the acknowledgement to say, hey, I see you, I notice you, and let's get through this together. And so I think that's a very beautiful theme that I've been noticing. And then also the community and the communication and the being open to not only receive from others, but give from our experiences. I think that those are two, they go hand in hand and are so interwoven into this conversation. But yeah, I don't know, Ashley, if you have any other questions that you wanted to ask before closing.
No, I think we've already done such a beautiful job of sprinkling hope throughout the whole episode. So I feel like our hope question you've already answered in a lot of ways. But, maybe as a close, how would you encourage the moms who are in a similar place maybe to where you were before you reached out for that peer support. Maybe they're feeling incredibly isolated and they just feel like, I don't know anybody who's gone through this. I'm so alone. How would you gently nudge them to maybe seek out some of those peer support options in a place of pain?
Yeah. Just knowing that there is hope out there. You just have to find what works for you, whether it's joining a group like this and doing these monthly meetings where you get to talk to and share your story and ask for help from other moms, or reaching out to staff so that they can either give you some education to make things seem a little brighter, or they can provide you with community resources or some mental health help, or even just things as little as choosing a song. I know that was one thing that a lot of our NICU moms did, finding a song that provides a little inspiration. And for me, there was this Rascal Flatts song, which I'm not even really big into country. But anyway, this what the heck was the name of that song? I Won't Let Go. And I used to sing that every day on the way to the NICU, and every day on the way home, I'd sing it to Katie. There's a strength in that song that I just kind of held on to. But just knowing that there really is help. It is not as dark and as scary and as just terrible as it feels. It can get better, and it will get better. You just have to reach out, and don't try to do it on your own. There's no reason why you need to. It's a very, very hard thing. I've never experienced anything harder, and God, I do some hard things. But this is the NICU journey, the NICU roller coaster. I mean, it's called a roller coaster ride for a reason. It's so windy, and ups and downs and setbacks, and you have to just reach out to whoever and wherever you can to find somebody who will help you get through it. And it just makes it a little bit easier and a little more bearable until you can get to the other side of it,
So beautiful.
That's so wonderful. And I'm so grateful that we got this chance to talk. I feel like we can talk for hours and hours.
Yeah.
You are just, you have been such a gift. And I'm so glad that you decided.
So have you guys.
Well, no, I'm so glad that you decided to take that courageous step and look, and that you were able to find Dear NICU Mama. And already, it's just been so evident that not only I know it's been so beneficial for you, but you have also just from the get-go been so willing to also share your knowledge. And I mean, you're the first to say, if anyone wants to reach out, this is where you can find me, and just always so available. And I think that is just so remarkable. And you are such a wonderful human being, mother and nurse, and we're just so grateful for you and your knowledge. So thank you so much for joining us today on this conversation.
I appreciate that. Thank you, guys. I appreciate being here. Really, I'm honored. I thank you both for that privilege to be here.
Ours.
And we gotta keep, we just gotta keep helping each other out. It doesn't matter if we're a nurse or a teacher or a stay-at-home mom or whatever we do. We're women who gotta support each other through all of these hard times.
So good. Well, mamas, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dear NICU Mama podcast. And we just want to especially recognize maybe some of our mamas who are NICU nurse, NICU mamas who share that really unique combo. And we hope that throughout this episode, you have just felt very validated and seen and just recognized. We recognize not only your role as a NICU nurse and how remarkable that is, but also how courageous it is to enter those doors time and time again to care for babies that maybe are very similar to your own. And so just know that the sisterhood longs to support you and is here to support you, and that you are worthy of that support. So we will be back next week. Happy Nurses Week. If you're a NICU nurse listening, we love you so much. You are angels, but we also like completely empathize with the need to be human. So you can be human and angels at the same time. So
Yeah. Thank
you for
you.
all of the remarkable work that you do and just for really empowering us to be the best moms that we can be. So mamas will be back next week for another episode, but have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening to the Dear NICU Mama podcast. If you loved this episode, we'd be so grateful for a review.
For more ways to connect with the Dear NICU Mama sisterhood, check out the links in the episode description.